Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
The phone call that shattered my world came at 2:37 in the morning. I bolted upright in my Phoenix apartment, heart hammering, as my mother's voice cracked through the speaker. Kevin had killed someone. My 24-year-old brother had been driving drunk and struck a pedestrian, leaving them dead in the crosswalk. But instead of asking me to come support our family through this tragedy, Mom begged me to confess to the crime myself. "You're strong, Jonas," she sobbed. "Kevin wouldn't survive prison. Do your duty as the older brother." Her words felt like ice water in my veins. In that moment, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, while she pleaded for me to sacrifice my life for his mistakes, I realized something that broke my heart completely. I no longer had a mother. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, driving through the empty Phoenix streets toward my childhood home in Scottsdale. The desert air felt suffocating despite the cool October night. Every street light seemed to mock me, illuminating the path toward a conversation that would change everything I believed about my family. I found Kevin sprawled across our old leather couch, unconscious and reeking of whiskey. Empty beer bottles littered the coffee table alongside crumpled fast food wrappers. His clothes were stained, his face puffy from alcohol, and he looked nothing like the little brother I had protected throughout our childhood. Mom paced the kitchen like a caged animal, her graying hair disheveled and her eyes wild with panic. "But thank God you came," she whispered, rushing toward me. "We need to figure this out before the police connect the dots." "Connect what dots, Mom? Kevin killed someone. There's nothing to figure out." Linda stopped pacing and stared at me with an expression I had never seen before. Cold, calculating. "Jonas, listen carefully. This isn't Kevin's first incident. He's had 2 previous DUI arrests that I've handled quietly through expensive attorneys. We've spent over $80,000 keeping his record clean." The number hit me like a physical blow. 80,000. Where did that money come from? "Your college fund," she said matter-of-factly. "And your father's life insurance money. I had to protect Kevin's future." My legs felt weak. Dad had died in a construction accident when I was 19, and his life insurance was supposed to secure our family's stability. I had assumed Mom was managing it responsibly while I worked construction jobs to pay for community college. "You spent Dad's death benefit on Kevin's drunk driving." "I spent it on family," she snapped. "And now you need to step up again." Kevin stirred on the couch, mumbling incoherently. The smell of alcohol was so strong it made my stomach turn. This wasn't the first time I had seen him like this. Over the past 2 years, his drinking had escalated from weekend parties to daily binges. I had tried talking to him, offering to pay for rehab, even threatening to cut contact if he didn't get help. Nothing worked. "Tell me exactly what happened tonight," I demanded. Mom's face crumpled. The victim was Sarah Martinez, 31 years old, mother of 2 young children. She worked at Desert Willow Elementary School. Kevin was... She paused, searching for the right words. He was racing. Street racing with his friends Tyler and Brandon. They were speeding down Indian School Road when Kevin struck her in the crosswalk near 24th Street. The details made me nauseous. Sarah Martinez had been walking home from her evening shift at the school, where she probably stayed late grading papers or preparing lessons for her students. She had children waiting for her at home. Children who would never see their mother again, because my brother wanted to play Fast and Furious on public streets. Mom pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. Tyler recorded everything on his phone. He sent me this video right after it happened. The footage was grainy and shaky, but clear enough to destroy any remaining hope I had for Kevin's innocence. 3 cars raced down the dark street, engines roaring as they weaved between late-night traffic. Kevin's red Mustang was in the lead, pulling ahead of Tyler's Camaro, and Brandon's Challenger. The speedometer on Tyler's dashboard showed they were doing 73 miles per hour in a 35 mph zone. Then it happened. Sarah Martinez stepped into the crosswalk following the pedestrian signal that gave her the right of way. Kevin's Mustang struck her with such force that her body flew 20 feet through the air before hitting the asphalt with a sickening thud. The video captured Kevin hitting his brakes too late, his taillights flashing red as he skidded to a stop 50 yards past the crosswalk. What happened next made me want to destroy the phone. Kevin got out of his car, looked back at Sarah's motionless body, and then sprinted away from the scene. Tyler's camera followed him as he disappeared into an alley behind a strip mall, abandoning the woman he had just killed. He left her there. I whispered, my voice barely audible. He panicked, Mom said, as if that explained everything. He called me from a gas station bathroom crying and scared. I picked him up and brought him home. Kevin's eyes fluttered open at the sound of our voices. He struggled to sit up, swaying slightly as he focused on my face. Jonas, what are you doing here? Cleaning up your mess, apparently. Kevin actually laughed at my response. Relax, big brother. Accidents happen, right? People die in car crashes every day. It's not like I planned it. The casualness of his words stunned me. No remorse, no guilt, no acknowledgement that he had destroyed multiple lives with his reckless selfishness. Kevin, you killed someone's mother. You left her dying in the street and ran away like a coward. And now you're going to fix it, he said, standing unsteadily. That's what big brothers do. They protect their family. By taking the blame for your crimes, Mom explained the situation right. You can handle prison. You're tough, you've got construction muscles, and you don't have anxiety like I do. I'll die in there, Jonas. Literally, die. You'll survive and come out stronger. I looked between Kevin and Mom, searching for any sign of the family I thought I knew. Instead, I saw two strangers who viewed me as nothing more than a convenient solution to their problems. And what about my life? My job. My future. Your job? Kevin scoffed. You work construction, Jonas. Anyone can swing a hammer. I'm studying business at Arizona State. I have potential. I could run a company someday, employ hundreds of people. Your sacrifice would serve the greater good. Mom nodded enthusiastically. Kevin's right. You've always been the responsible one, the one who puts family first. Your father would expect you to protect your younger brother. Dad would expect Kevin to face the consequences of his actions. Don't you dare speak for your father, Mom hissed. He's not here because he was trying to provide for this family. The least you can do is honor his memory by keeping his sons together. I headed for the door, needing fresh air before I said something I couldn't take back. I need time to think. Time, Haris. Mom followed me outside onto the front porch. Jonas, Kevin has to turn himself in within 48 hours or the police will issue a warrant. Every minute we waste makes this harder to control. Control. I spun around to face her. Mom, your son committed vehicular manslaughter and fled the scene. You can't control this. You can only make it worse by adding fraud and conspiracy to the charges. I'm trying to save my family, she shouted loud enough to wake the neighbors. I already lost my husband. I won't lose both my sons because one made a mistake. A mistake Kevin chose to drink. He chose to race. He chose to run. Those weren't mistakes, they were decisions that killed an innocent woman. Mom's face hardened. If you walk away from Kevin now, you're abandoning your family. Your father would be ashamed of you. The accusation hit like a slap. I climbed into my truck and drove away, leaving Mom standing in the driveway screaming about duty and loyalty. In my rearview mirror, I watched her storm back into the house, probably to comfort Kevin and reassure him that Big Brother would come around eventually. But as I drove through the quiet Scottsdale neighborhoods where I'd grown up, I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah Martinez. Somewhere in this same city, two children were waking up to discover that their mother would never come home. They would never receive another hug. never hear another bedtime story, never feel safe and loved in the way that only a mother can provide. And my family wanted me to help the man responsible escape justice. 3 days passed without sleep. I called in sick to my construction job at Morrison Building Company, unable to concentrate on anything except the impossible choice Mom had forced upon me. My apartment felt like a prison cell as I researched vehicular manslaughter laws on my laptop, trying to understand exactly what Kevin was facing. The Arizona revised statutes were clear and brutal. Kevin could receive 8 to 22 years in state prison for manslaughter, plus additional charges for leaving the scene of a fatal accident, racing, and driving under the influence. If prosecutors decided to pursue vehicular homicide instead of manslaughter, he could face life imprisonment. The civil liability alone would bankrupt him for decades, assuming he lived long enough to pay it. But my research also revealed something that made my blood run cold. Taking the fall for someone else's crime was conspiracy and fraud. If caught, I could face federal charges for obstruction of justice, filing false police reports, and conspiracy. Instead of protecting Kevin, I could end up serving more time than he would. On Thursday morning, I drove to the intersection where Sarah Martinez had died. Someone had created a memorial at the crosswalk where Kevin struck her. Dozens of flowers covered the sidewalk alongside handwritten notes from students at Desert Willow Elementary. Photos of Sarah showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. One picture captured her reading to a classroom of first graders, all of them hanging on her every word. A poster board displayed information about her children, Maria, age 7, and Carlos, age 9. They were now living with their grandmother, Elena Martinez, who worked 2 jobs to support the family. The community had organized fundraisers for the children's education, raising over $40,000 in just 3 days. I knelt beside the memorial and read note after note from Sarah's students. Miss Martinez helped me learn to read. Miss Martinez always had snacks for kids who were hungry. Miss Martinez said I was smart even when I felt stupid. Each message revealed a woman who had dedicated her life to helping children, someone who made the world better simply by existing. Kevin had stolen all of that potential, all of that goodness for the thrill of racing his friends down a city street. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from Mom. 15 missed calls on Wednesday, 18 on Thursday. Each voicemail grew more desperate and angry. Jonas, call me back immediately. Your brother needs you right now. I don't understand how you can be so selfish. 48 hours, Jonas. That's all we have left. Finally, I answered. Thank God, Mom gasped. I've been worried sick. Where are you? At Sarah Martinez's memorial. Silence. Then, why would you torture yourself like that? Because Kevin killed her mom. Because she had children who will grow up without their mother. Because this isn't some abstract legal problem you can solve with money and connections. She's gone, Jonas. Nothing we do will bring her back. But Kevin is alive and we can still save him. What about saving me? You don't need saving. You're strong enough to handle whatever comes. Kevin isn't. I returned to work Friday morning hoping manual labor would quiet my racing thoughts. Marcus Johnson, my best friend and work partner for 3 years, noticed my distraction immediately. We had been framing a new house in Awata Key, but I kept measuring boards wrong and hammering crooked nails. Brother, what's eating you? Marcus asked during our lunch break. You've been walking around like a zombie since Wednesday. Marcus was the closest thing I had to real family. We had met when I started at Morrison Building, and he had taken me under his wing despite being only 2 years older. He was married to his high school sweetheart Denise, and they had 3 young children who called me Uncle Jonas. Their home was the only place I felt genuine love and acceptance. Family problems, I said, staring at my untouched sandwich. Kevin again. Marcus knew about my brother's drinking and legal troubles. I had borrowed money from him twice, to pay Kevin's lawyer fees money that Marcus never asked me to repay despite his own financial struggles. It's worse this time. How much worse? I told him everything. The accident Sarah Martinez mom's plan to frame me, Kevin's complete lack of remorse. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. Jonas, please tell me you're not considering this insane plan. I don't know what to do. She's my mother, Marcus. Kevin's my brother. I've been taking care of them since Dad died. Taking care of family doesn't mean destroying your life for their mistakes. What your mom is asking isn't love, it's abuse. She says Kevin won't survive prison. Then Kevin should have thought about that before he got behind the wheel drunk and killed someone. Marcus grabbed my shoulders and forced me to look at him. Listen to me carefully, brother. If you confess to this crime, you will spend the next 15 years in state prison. You will lose your job, your apartment, your future. When you get out, you'll be a middle-aged ex-felon with no skills and no prospects. Meanwhile, Kevin will continue partying and drinking, probably kill someone else in a few years. The truth of his words hit like a sledgehammer. But if I don't help them, then Kevin faces the consequences of his own actions like every other adult in America. Your mom will be angry for a while, but she'll eventually accept reality. Life goes on. She says she'll never forgive me. Jonas, she's asking you to confess to vehicular manslaughter. She's asking you to go to prison for a decade to save the son who actually committed the crime. If she can't forgive you for refusing to destroy your life, then her forgiveness isn't worth having. That evening, Mom called again. I answered on the first ring. I've been meeting with an attorney, she said without preamble. Bradley Thompson specializes in complex family legal situations. He says we can make this work if you agree to cooperate. What kind of attorney helps families commit fraud? The kind who understands that families protect each other. Bradley has handled similar cases before. He knows how to structure your confession to minimize the sentence while keeping Kevin safe. Mom, listen to yourself. You're talking about conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and perjury. These are serious federal crimes. Bradley says the risk is minimal if we follow his guidance. He's already begun drafting the necessary paperwork. We need your signature by tomorrow evening. Paperwork. A confession stating that you borrowed Kevin's car that night to drive to a bar downtown. You had been drinking heavily and decided to race some friends on the way home. The collision was an accident caused by your impaired judgment and reckless driving. You panicked and fled the scene, but your guilt has become overwhelming. The clinical way she described framing me for Kevin's crimes made me want to vomit. And Kevin? Kevin was home sleeping. He'll testify that you asked to borrow his car because yours was being repaired. He tried to stop you from driving drunk, but you ignored his concerns. So Kevin becomes the responsible brother who tried to prevent the tragedy while I become the drunken killer. It's the only way to save this family, Jonas. What about saving me? You'll receive credit for confessing voluntarily and showing remorse. Bradley estimates 8 to 10 years with good behavior. You could be out in 7 years. I would be 35 when I was released with a felony record that would destroy any chance of a decent job or normal life. Kevin would graduate from Arizona State, probably with Mom paying his tuition, using whatever money remained from Dad's insurance. He would build a career while I rotted in a cell paying for his crimes. I need more time to think. There is no more time. Kevin has to surrender tomorrow morning, or the police will issue a warrant. Once they start investigating, Bradley won't be able to control the narrative. Then maybe Kevin should surrender and tell the truth. Jonas Michael Anderson, you listen to me right now. I have sacrificed everything for this family since your father died. I worked double shifts as a real estate agent to keep this house. I paid for Kevin's therapy when he struggled with depression. I've covered his legal fees and protected his future. The one time I ask you to step up and protect your brother, you want to abandon us. Her voice broke into sobs. I can't lose Kevin Jonas. He's sensitive and artistic and special. Prison will destroy everything beautiful about him. But you're strong. You've been strong since you were a little boy. You can survive anything. What if I can't? You can, because you're my son, and I raised you to do the right thing no matter how much it hurts. The call ended with Mom crying, and me staring at my phone wondering how doing the right thing had become synonymous with destroying my life. Outside my apartment window, Phoenix stretched out under the desert stars, a city full of people living normal lives without impossible choices. Somewhere in that city, Sarah Martinez's children were probably crying themselves to sleep, wondering why their mommy wasn't coming home to read them bedtime stories. And somewhere else, Kevin was probably drinking again, confident that his big brother would save him from the consequences of killing their mother. I had 18 hours to decide which life to destroy, Kevin's or my own. I met with attorney David Walsh at 8:30 Saturday morning in his downtown Phoenix office. Walsh specialized in criminal defense and had been recommended by Marcus's brother-in-law, who worked as a paralegal. The consultation fee cost me $300 I couldn't afford, but I needed to understand exactly what Mom was asking me to do. Walsh was a thin man in his 50s, with graying hair and tired eyes. His office walls displayed law degrees from University of Arizona and certificates from various legal associations. He listened patiently as I explained the situation, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Mr. Anderson, I need to be absolutely clear about the consequences if you follow through with your mother's plan, he said when I finished. Vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated carries 8 to 22 years in Arizona State Prison. Racing adds additional charges. Fleeing the scene could add another 3 to 7 years. You're looking at a minimum of 11 years, maximum of 29. The numbers felt surreal. My mom's attorney said 8 to 10 years with good behavior. Thompson is either lying or incompetent. First-time offenders can receive lighter sentences, but vehicular homicide involving racing and fleeing the scene is taken very seriously by Arizona courts. Judge Patricia Williams typically sentences at the higher end of the guidelines for these cases. Walsh leaned forward across his desk. But that's not the worst part. If prosecutors discover you're lying to protect someone else, you'll face federal charges for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and fraud. Those charges carry potential sentences of 5 to 20 years, each served consecutively with your state sentence. Consecutively, one after the other, not at the same time. You could spend 30 to 40 years in prison. The room felt like it was spinning. What should I do? Tell your brother to surrender himself and hire competent counsel. Let the justice system work as intended. Do not under any circumstances confess to crimes you didn't commit. My mother says she'll never forgive me if I don't protect Kevin. Walsh sighed deeply. Mr. Anderson, I've practiced criminal law for 25 years. I've seen families destroy themselves trying to protect guilty members from consequences. It never works. The truth always emerges eventually, usually making everything worse. But Kevin might not survive prison. That's his choice to make, not yours. You cannot live someone else's life for them. You cannot serve someone else's sentence. And you cannot sacrifice your future for their past mistakes. I left Walsh's office feeling more conflicted than ever. His advice made perfect sense, logically, but emotionally, I still felt responsible for Kevin somehow. We were brothers. We had grown up in the same house, shared the same struggles after Dad died. How could I stand by and watch him go to prison when I had the power to save him? My phone contained 23 missed calls from Mom and 6 text messages begging me to reconsider. The last message read, "Kevin is falling apart. He's talking about suicide. Please come home before it's too late." I drove to Scottsdale, arriving at the family home around noon. Kevin's red Mustang sat in the driveway, and I could see fresh damage to the front bumper and headlight. The sight of the car that killed Sarah Martinez made my stomach clench. Inside, Kevin was sitting at the kitchen table with Mom and a man I didn't recognize. The stranger was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive navy suit and gold watch. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his teeth were unnaturally white when he smiled. "Jonas, thank goodness you're here," Mom said, rushing to hug me. "This is Bradley Thompson, the attorney I mentioned." Thompson stood and extended his hand. His grip was firm and his demeanor confident. "Mr. Anderson, your mother has told me wonderful things about you. I understand you're considering making a significant sacrifice for your family. I'm considering committing fraud to help my brother escape justice, if that's what you mean." Thompson laughed as if I had made a joke. "I prefer to think of it as creative problem solving. Families face difficult situations, and sometimes unconventional solutions serve everyone's best interests. Everyone except me. Actually, Mr. Anderson, my approach will benefit you as well. By confessing voluntarily and expressing genuine remorse, you'll receive maximum consideration from the court. I've already spoken with Prosecutor Dennis Clark, who is willing to recommend reduced charges in exchange for your cooperation. You've already spoken to the prosecutor about a confession I haven't made. I wanted to test the waters, see what kind of deal might be possible. Clark is reasonable. He wants closure for the Martinez family and a conviction that will deter future racing incidents. Your confession accomplishes both goals." Mom set a cup of coffee in front of me. "Kevin has been so depressed since the accident. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. I found him researching ways to kill himself online." I looked at Kevin, who was staring at his hands and saying nothing. His face was pale, and his eyes were red-rimmed. But he didn't look suicidal. He looked hungover and scared. "Kevin, talk to me. How are you feeling about all this?" Kevin glanced at Mom and Thompson before answering. "Honestly, I'm terrified, Jonas. I keep thinking about what prison will be like. The other inmates, the violence, the isolation. I have anxiety attacks just thinking about it." "You should have considered that before you decided to race while drunk." "I know I messed up, okay? I know I made terrible choices. But I can't change what happened. All I can do is hope my brother loves me enough to help me when I need him most." Thompson pulled a manila folder from his briefcase and spread documents across the kitchen table. "I've prepared everything we need. A detailed confession witness statements from Kevin corroborating your story, and character references from family friends. The narrative is airtight. I scanned the confession letter written in legal language that made me sound like a remorseful drunk driver who had made one tragic mistake. According to the document, I had borrowed Kevin's car to meet friends at a downtown bar called Roosevelt Social Club. After drinking heavily, I decided to race 2 other cars on the way home, resulting in the collision that killed Sarah Martinez. This says I was drinking at Roosevelt Social Club. I've never been there in my life." "That's easily fixed," Thompson said smoothly. "I have security footage from that night showing someone who resembles you at the bar. The lighting is poor enough that identification would be difficult to dispute." "You have fake security footage?" "I have actual security footage that supports our narrative. Sometimes reality aligns with our needs." The casual way Thompson discussed manufacturing evidence chilled me. "What about Tyler's video? The one that shows Kevin racing?" "Tyler Morrison has agreed to testify that he was racing against you, not Kevin. His video will mysteriously disappear from his phone due to a technical malfunction." "You're asking him to lie under oath." "I'm asking him to remember events differently. Memory is subjective, Mr. Anderson. People often misremember details under stress." Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Jonas, this is our only chance to keep this family together. Kevin has learned his lesson. This will never happen again." I looked at Kevin, searching for any sign of genuine remorse or growth. Instead, I saw the same entitled expression he had worn since childhood, whenever someone else cleaned up his messes. "Kevin, do you understand that Sarah Martinez is dead? That her children will grow up without their mother?" "Of course I understand that. I feel terrible about it. but not terrible enough to face the consequences yourself. Look, I'm sorry she's dead okay, but going to prison won't bring her back. All it will do is destroy 2 lives instead of 1. 2 lives. Mine and Mom's. She'll worry herself to death if I'm locked up. You're strong enough to handle prison and strong enough to handle Mom's grief if something happens to you. I'm not. Thompson tapped his gold pen against the confession documents. Mr. Anderson, I need your decision within the next 2 hours. After that, Kevin will have to surrender himself and hope for the best. I stood up from the table, needing space to think. I'm going for a walk. Jonas, wait. Mom called after me. There's something else you need to know. I turned back toward the kitchen. Mom's face had gone pale. What? Kevin wasn't just drinking that night. He was also using cocaine. The toxicology report will show both alcohol and drugs in his system when they test the blood evidence from the car. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Cocaine. Since when does Kevin use cocaine? It's not regular use, Kevin said quickly. Just occasionally at parties. Tyler had some that night, and I thought it would help me drive better. Cocaine doesn't help you drive better, you idiot. It impairs judgment and increases reckless behavior. I know that now. Thompson cleared his throat. The drug charges add complexity, but they also provide additional motivation for accepting our arrangement. Cocaine possession and distribution carry mandatory minimum sentences in Arizona. Distribution? Mom and Kevin exchanged glances. Finally, Mom spoke. Kevin has been selling small amounts to friends at college to pay for his expenses. Nothing major, just enough to cover rent and groceries. The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. My brother wasn't just a drunk driver who had killed someone while racing. He was also a drug dealer who had been operating for months while Mom enabled his behavior. How long have you known about the dealing, Mom? A few months. I caught him with cash and pills in his room. He explained that it was just helping friends get medication they needed. Medication? Kevin, what exactly are you selling? Kevin's voice was barely a whisper. Adderall, Percocet, cocaine sometimes. Rich kids at ASU pay crazy money for study drugs and party supplies. You're a drug dealer. I'm a college student trying to survive financially. Mom can't afford my tuition and living expenses, so I found a way to make it work. Thompson shuffled through more papers in his briefcase. The drug charges would likely result in 10 to 15 additional years if Kevin is convicted. Federal prosecutors are very aggressive with college campus distribution cases. I stared at the 3 people sitting around my childhood kitchen table, and none of them looked familiar anymore. Mom had become a desperate woman, willing to sacrifice one son to save another. Kevin had become a drug-dealing killer with no conscience. Thompson was a corrupt lawyer who specialized in helping criminals escape justice. I need to go, I said, heading for the door. Jonas, please, Mom begged. Kevin's life depends on your decision. Then maybe Kevin should have made better decisions. I walked outside to find Kevin's red Mustang sitting in the driveway, its damaged front end catching the afternoon sunlight. I circled the car, slowly examining the evidence of his crime. The bumper was cracked, the right headlight was shattered, and there were scrapes along the passenger side that looked like they came from Sarah Martinez's clothing or jewelry. Kevin joined me in the driveway. Look, I know this is a lot to ask, but you're my brother Jonas. We're family. Family doesn't ask family to confess to murder. It's not murder. It was an accident. An accident. You chose to drink. You chose to use cocaine. You chose to race. You chose to flee the scene. Those were all deliberate decisions. Kevin kicked at the gravel driveway. Fine, maybe I made some bad choices, but I can't change what happened. All I can do is try to move forward and make better choices in the future. From prison. Prison will destroy me, Jonas. I'm not built for that kind of environment. I'm sensitive. I get panic attacks. The other inmates will smell weakness and tear me apart. Then you should have considered that before you started dealing drugs and killing people. God, you're self-righteous. You act like you've never made mistakes. I've never made mistakes that killed innocent mothers. Kevin's face hardened. You know what, fine? If you won't help me, I'll figure something else out. What does that mean? Maybe Kevin Anderson dies in a car accident tonight. Maybe he disappears completely and starts over somewhere else. There are ways to handle this that don't involve either of us going to prison. You're talking about faking your death. I'm talking about survival. If you won't take the fall and I can't handle prison, then maybe there's a third option. The suggestion was so absurd that I almost laughed. Kevin, you can't just disappear. This is real life, not a movie. People do it all the time. New identity, new city, new life. Mom has real estate connections who can help arrange documentation. I looked back toward the house where Mom and Thompson were probably finalizing their criminal conspiracy. Mom's involved in identity fraud too. Mom's involved in protecting her family, which is more than I can say for you. Kevin stormed back toward the house, leaving me standing alone beside his damaged car. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. How did it go with the lawyer? He asked. Worse than I imagined. Kevin's also a drug dealer, and now they're talking about faking his death if I don't confess. Jesus Christ, Jonas, these people are completely unhinged. I don't know what to do, Marcus. If I don't help them, they might do something even more desperate. That's not your responsibility. You cannot control other people's actions. You can only control your own. But if Kevin disappears or hurts himself, then that's Kevin's choice, not yours. You're not responsible for managing other adults' reactions to consequences. I drove home to my apartment, leaving Mom and Thompson and Kevin to plan whatever criminal conspiracy they thought would save them. My phone buzzed with text messages for the rest of the evening, each one more desperate than the last. Mom, please reconsider. Kevin needs you. Kevin, I thought you loved me. Thompson, time is running out, Mr. Anderson. Mom, your father would be ashamed of your selfishness. Kevin, fine, I'll handle this my own way. The last message came at 11:47 that night from an unknown number. If you don't confess, you'll be sorry. Kevin won't be the only one who suffers. I stared at the threat, wondering if my own family was now prepared to hurt me to protect Kevin. The phone call that had started this nightmare seemed like it had happened months ago, instead of just 4 days. Everything I had believed about family loyalty and love had been shattered, replaced by a sick understanding of how far desperate people would go to avoid consequences. Tomorrow, Kevin was supposed to surrender to police, or I was supposed to confess to his crimes. Neither option felt possible anymore. Sunday morning brought no peace, only the certainty that I had to uncover the complete truth before making any decisions about my future. Kevin's deadline was approaching, and Mom's threats were escalating, but something about their story felt incomplete. Too many details didn't align with what I knew about that night. I drove to the intersection where Sarah Martinez had died, hoping to find witnesses or evidence that might reveal what really happened. The memorial had grown larger over the weekend, with hundreds of flowers, candles, and handwritten notes covering the sidewalk. Photos of Sarah showed her volunteering at school events, reading to children and smiling alongside her own kids at family gatherings. The Indian School Road corridor was lined with businesses, a gas station, Mexican restaurant, auto parts store, and several small shops. Most would have been closed at the time of the accident, but security cameras might have captured something useful. I started with the gas station on the southeast corner, a small independent business called Desert Fuel Stop. The owner, Jake Morrison, was restocking energy drinks when I approached the counter. He was a weathered man in his 60s, with calloused hands and tired eyes. Terrible thing that happened across the street? I said, testing his willingness to discuss the incident. Jake shook his head sadly. Sarah Martinez. Sweet lady, came in here sometimes for coffee on her way to work, early morning shifts. Can't believe some drunk punk killed her and drove off like she was roadkill. Did you see anything that night? Nah, I close at 10, but my security cameras run 24/7. He gestured towards several cameras mounted around the store's exterior. Police already came by asking for footage. My heart raced. Did you give it to them? Of course I did, though they seemed more interested in getting statements from witnesses than reviewing the actual video. Statements. Yeah, some kid named Tyler Morrison came forward claiming he saw the whole thing. Said he was racing against the driver who hit Sarah, some guy named... Jake paused, thinking. Started with a J, I think. Jonas. That's it. Tyler said this Jonas guy was drunk and driving recklessly, racing multiple cars down Indian School. Kid seemed real broken up about it. Said he tried to get Jonas to slow down, but couldn't stop him. Tyler had already given false statements to police exactly as Thompson had planned. The conspiracy was moving forward whether I participated or not. Jake, do you still have copies of the security footage? Sure, I keep everything for 90 days in case of insurance claims or whatnot. Why? I decided to take a chance on honesty. Because my name is Jonas, and Tyler is lying to protect the real killer. Jake's expression shifted from friendly to suspicious. What are you talking about? The man who killed Sarah Martinez is my brother Kevin Anderson. My family is trying to frame me for his crime. I need to see that footage to prove my innocence. If that's true, why haven't you gone to the police? Because I don't have proof yet. Tyler's testimony combined with my mother's lies might be enough to convict me if I can't demonstrate what really happened. Jake studied my face for a long moment. You seem sincere, but I can't just hand over police evidence to random people. I'm not asking you to give me the footage. I'm asking you to watch it with me and tell me what you see. If it shows Kevin instead of me, maybe you'll understand why I need help. After several minutes of hesitation, Jake led me to a small office behind the counter where multiple monitor screens showed live feeds from his security cameras. He pulled up archived footage from the night of the accident and scrolled to 11:37 p.m. Here we go, he said, pointing to the timestamp. This is about 5 minutes before the collision. The black and white video showed Indian School Road from an elevated angle. Traffic was light, just a few cars traveling in each direction. Then 3 vehicles came racing down the westbound lanes, engines clearly audible, even through the security system's basic audio recording. Jesus, Jake whispered. Look at those idiots fly. Kevin's red Mustang was in the lead, followed closely by Tyler's blue Camaro and a third car I didn't recognize. They were weaving between normal traffic, running red lights and traveling at least twice the posted speed limit. Other drivers swerved to avoid them, some pulling onto the shoulder or into parking lots. There, I said, pointing to the screen. Freeze it right there. Jake paused the video at the moment Kevin's Mustang passed directly under a streetlight. Even in the grainy security footage, Kevin's face was clearly visible through the windshield. His mouth was open, probably shouting or laughing, and his hands gripped the steering wheel with reckless confidence. That's not you, Jake said quietly. No, that's my brother Kevin. Keep playing it. The video continued, showing the 3 cars racing toward the intersection where Sarah Martinez would be crossing. At exactly 11:41 p.m., the collision occurred just outside the camera's frame. But the audio captured the sickening sound of metal hitting flesh, followed by screeching brakes and shattering glass. Oh God, Jake muttered. 30 seconds later, Kevin's Mustang came back into frame, traveling slowly eastbound, with obvious front-end damage. The car stopped at the edge of the camera's view, and we could see Kevin getting out to assess the damage. He looked around frantically, then abandoned the vehicle and ran toward the gas station. He's running right toward us, Jake said. Let me switch to the parking lot camera. The secondary camera showed Kevin sprinting across the gas station parking lot, pulling out his phone as he disappeared behind the building. He was clearly panicked, but also clearly thinking strategically, putting distance between himself and the crime scene before calling for help. How long until someone else arrives? I asked. Jake fast-forwarded through several minutes of empty parking lot before a silver BMW sedan pulled up behind the building. Kevin emerged from his hiding spot and climbed into the passenger seat. The car's license plate was partially visible, Arizona tag beginning with 8G7. That's my mother's car, I said. She picked him up. Your mother was there that night. According to the timestamp, she arrived 16 minutes after the collision. She knew exactly where to find Kevin because he called her from back there. Jake rewound the footage and played it again, this time focusing on the audio. The security system had picked up fragments of conversation when Kevin made his phone call, though most words were inaudible due to wind and distance. Can you enhance the audio at all? Not really, but let me turn up the volume and see what we can hear. With the speakers at maximum volume, we could make out pieces of Kevin's conversation. Mom. Crashed. Need you to? Indian school and 24th. Hurry. Police will? He called his mother before he called for medical help, Jake said with disgust. Sarah might have survived if someone had called an ambulance immediately. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Sarah Martinez didn't die instantly from the collision. She lay bleeding and dying in the street, while Kevin hid behind a gas station calling his mother to plan his escape instead of calling 911 to save her life. Jake, I need copies of this footage. I can't give you the actual files, but I could burn some clips to DVD if you promise to take them to the proper authorities. The proper authorities are already being fed lies by my family's attorney. I need independent evidence to expose their conspiracy. Jake studied my face again. This is really your brother in the video. Yes, and my mother picked him up, and Tyler Morrison is giving false testimony to protect them. If I don't prove my innocence, I'll be convicted of vehicular manslaughter. Why would your own family frame you? Because they think Kevin is more valuable than I am. Because they think I'm strong enough to survive prison while he's too weak. Because they've convinced themselves that sacrificing me serves the greater good. Jake shook his head in amazement. I've heard of dysfunctional families, but this is something else entirely. He burned 2 DVD copies of the crucial footage, including Kevin's escape and Mom's arrival. The evidence was clear and damning. Kevin committed the crime, abandoned Sarah Martinez without calling for help, and coordinated his escape with our mother's assistance. What are you going to do with this? Jake asked. First, I'm going to copy everything and hide the duplicates. Then I'm going to figure out how to use this evidence to stop their conspiracy without destroying what's left of my family. Your family is destroying itself, son. You're just trying not to get buried in the rubble. I thanked Jake and left Desert Fuel Stop with the DVDs hidden in my jacket. The evidence felt like it weighed 100 pounds heavy with the power to save my life and destroy Kevin's. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still missing pieces to this puzzle. Kevin had been confident that Tyler would lie for him. Mom had known exactly where to find Kevin after the crash. Thompson had prepared legal documents before I agreed to anything. The whole conspiracy felt too organized, too prepared to be a desperate reaction to an unexpected crisis. How long had they been planning to frame me? And what else were they hiding? Armed with Jake's surveillance footage, I spent Monday morning researching Bradley Thompson's law practice and criminal defense history. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Thompson wasn't just a corrupt attorney helping families commit fraud. He was running a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had been operating for years. Public records showed Thompson had represented dozens of cases where wealthy defendants received impossibly lenient sentences for serious crimes. DUI manslaughter cases that should have resulted in 20-year sentences were pleading down to 2 years of probation. Assault charges disappeared entirely. Drug trafficking cases ended with community service. The pattern was unmistakable. Thompson specialized in helping privileged criminals escape justice through a combination of bribery, witness intimidation, and evidence manipulation. His client list read like a who's who of Phoenix's wealthiest families, all paying premium fees for premium results. I called the FBI's Phoenix field office from a payphone outside a Circle K, unwilling to use my personal phone for such a sensitive conversation. After being transferred through several departments, I was connected to Agent Rachel Sterling in the White-Collar Crime Division. Agent Sterling, I have evidence of a conspiracy involving judicial corruption, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. What kind of evidence, Mr. Anderson? Jonas Anderson. I have surveillance footage showing a hit-and-run vehicular homicide plus recordings of attorneys and family members planning to frame me for the crime. There was a pause. Mr. Anderson, are you saying someone is trying to frame you for vehicular homicide? My mother, my brother, and attorney Bradley Thompson are conspiring to make me confess to a crime my brother committed. Thompson has been bribing prosecutors and judges to ensure light sentences for his substitute defendants. That's a very serious accusation. Do you have documentation? I have video evidence of the actual crime, plus testimony from witnesses who can verify the conspiracy. But I need protection from retaliation if I come forward. Agent Sterling scheduled a meeting for Tuesday morning at the FBI field office. I spent the rest of Monday copying Jake's DVDs and hiding duplicates in multiple locations: my apartment, Marcus's house, and a safety deposit box at Wells Fargo. Tuesday morning, I sat across from Agent Sterling in a sterile conference room at the Federal Building downtown. She was a sharp-eyed woman in her early 40s with graying brown hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. Two other agents sat with her: Agent Michael Chen from Public Corruption and Agent David Park from Organized Crime. I played Jake's surveillance footage on Agent Sterling's laptop explaining the timeline and identifying the people involved. The agents watched silently, taking detailed notes as Kevin fled the scene and Mom arrived to help his escape. Since Mr. Anderson, this video clearly shows vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of a fatal accident, Agent Sterling said. But you're claiming there's a broader conspiracy. Bradley Thompson has been running a criminal enterprise for years, helping wealthy clients escape serious charges through bribery and fraud. My case is just the latest example. Agent Chen leaned forward. Actually, Mr. Anderson, we've been investigating Thompson's practice for 8 months as part of Operation Desert Justice. Your information could be extremely valuable to our case. You're already investigating Thompson? We have evidence of at least 15 cases where Thompson arranged for innocent parties to confess to crimes committed by his wealthy clients. The substitute defendants received suspended sentences or minimal jail time in exchange for taking the fall. Agent Park pulled out a thick folder. Thompson's network includes 3 judges, 2 prosecutors, and a handful of defense attorneys who refer clients to him. They've been splitting fees from cases that should have resulted in serious prison sentences. How does it work? Agent Sterling explained the system. Thompson identifies cases where wealthy defendants face serious charges. He finds desperate family members or unemployed individuals who need money and convinces them to confess in exchange for payment and promises of light sentences. The substitute defendants think they're getting a good deal: $50,000 cash and maybe 2 years in minimum security prison. But once they confess, Thompson's judicial contacts ensure the sentences are even lighter than promised. Meanwhile, the real criminals go free, and their families keep their reputations intact. Agent Chen showed me photographs of previous victims. We've identified 47 people who confessed to crimes they didn't commit through Thompson's network. Most were desperate financially and believed they were helping family members while earning money for their own families. What happened to them? The lucky ones served short sentences and were released with criminal records that destroyed their job prospects. The unlucky ones were murdered in prison to prevent them from recanting their confessions. My hands started shaking. Murdered. 3 substitute defendants have been killed in suspicious prison incidents over the past 2 years. Each death was ruled accidental or suicide, but our investigation suggests Thompson's network eliminates people who become liabilities. Agent Sterling placed a recording device on the table. Mr. Anderson, we need your help to expose this conspiracy, but I have to warn you, these people have killed to protect their operation. If you agree to work with us, you'll be in significant danger. What would you need me to do? Wear a wire to meetings with Thompson, your mother, and your brother. Get them to admit to the bribery conspiracy and their plans for your case. Give us evidence we can use to arrest the entire network. Agent Park opened another folder containing surveillance photos of Thompson's office building. We've been trying to get inside Thompson's operation for months, but he's very careful about vetting new clients. Your case gives us the perfect opportunity. What about Kevin and my mother? If they're willing to testify against Thompson and help us expose the judicial corruption, they might receive reduced sentences. But they'll still face serious charges for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Agent Sterling's expression softened slightly. Mr. Anderson, I understand this involves your family, but Thompson's network has destroyed dozens of lives and perverted justice for years. You have the power to stop them. What if something goes wrong? What if Thompson realizes I'm working with you? We'll provide protection and surveillance during all meetings. If you're in immediate danger, we'll intervene. And after what happens to me when this is over, you'll testify at trial and then be free to rebuild your life. No charges, no criminal record, no consequences for crimes you didn't commit. I thought about Sarah Martinez's children growing up without their mother while Kevin walked free. I thought about the 47 innocent people who had been manipulated into confessing to crimes they didn't commit. I thought about future victims who would suffer if Thompson's network continued operating. I'll do it. Agent Sterling smiled for the first time. We'll start by getting you wired up for your next meeting with Thompson. When is that scheduled? Mom expects me to sign the confession documents tonight at 6. Perfect, we'll have you ready. The agent spent 2 hours briefing me on surveillance techniques, recording equipment, and safety protocols. The wire was a small device that would be sewn into my jacket with a microphone hidden in a button. They would monitor everything from a van parked nearby and could intervene within 30 seconds if necessary. Remember, Mr. Anderson, the goal is to get Thompson to admit to bribing judges and prosecutors. Get him to discuss previous cases where he arranged substitute confessions. Most importantly, get him to explain how the light sentencing works. What about Kevin and Mom? Get them to admit they know you're innocent and that they're framing you deliberately. Get details about how long they've been planning this and whether they've discussed eliminating you permanently. The final instruction chilled me. If anyone mentions killing you or making you disappear, say the phrase, "I understand completely," and we'll move in immediately. I left the FBI building knowing that my life would change forever in the next 24 hours. Either I would expose a massive criminal conspiracy and save my future, or I would end up dead in a federal investigation gone wrong. But for the first time since Mom's phone call 5 days ago, I felt like I was fighting back instead of just surviving. Tuesday evening at 5:45, I sat in my truck outside Thompson's downtown law office wearing a wire and trying to control my racing heartbeat. Agent Sterling's voice crackled through a nearly invisible earpiece. Remember Jonas? We need them to admit to the bribery conspiracy and their plans for eliminating you if necessary. Stay calm and let them talk. The FBI surveillance van was parked across the street disguised as a telephone company vehicle. Agents Chen and Park were positioned in the building's lobby posing as maintenance workers. If anything went wrong, help would arrive within seconds. I entered Thompson's office building and rode the elevator to the 14th floor, my jacket concealing recording equipment that felt obvious, despite Agent Sterling's assurance that it was undetectable. The law offices of Thompson and Associates occupied the entire floor with marble floors, leather furniture, and oil paintings that screamed expensive legal services. Thompson's secretary, a young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, led me to a conference room where Mom and Kevin were already waiting. Kevin looked nervous and kept checking his phone while Mom appeared determined and focused. Thompson entered carrying a leather briefcase and wearing his trademark confident smile. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for coming. I trust you've made the right decision for your family." "I'm here to listen," I said carefully, "but I still have concerns about the legal risks." Thompson spread documents across the conference table, the confession letter, witness statements from Tyler and 2 other friends, and character references from family acquaintances. These documents create an airtight narrative that will satisfy prosecutors and minimize your sentence. How can you guarantee a light sentence? Because I've cultivated relationships with key decision makers in the Maricopa County justice system. Judge Patricia Williams handles most vehicular homicide cases, and prosecutor Dennis Clark determines charging recommendations. Both are reasonable people who appreciate cooperation and remorse. Agent Sterling's voice whispered in my ear, "Get him to be more specific about those relationships." When you say relationships, do you mean personal friendships or professional cooperation? Thompson chuckled. Let's just say that Judge Williams and Prosecutor Clark understand the difference between career criminals and good people who make tragic mistakes. Your voluntary confession and genuine remorse will weigh heavily in their decision-making. Mom leaned forward. Jonas Bradley has handled dozens of similar cases. He knows how to navigate the system. What other cases? Without violating attorney-client privilege, I can tell you about several situations where families faced similar challenges, Thompson said. Just last year, I represented a young man from Scottsdale who struck and killed a jogger while driving under the influence. Very similar circumstances to your brother's situation. What happened to him? His older sister confessed to the crime and received 18 months in minimum security prison. She was released after 14 months for good behavior and is now working as a teacher in Flagstaff. Kevin spoke up. See, people do this for family all the time. It's not as crazy as you think. I forced myself to stay calm. But how do you ensure such light sentences? Vehicular homicide usually carries much heavier penalties. Thompson's smile widened. Experience, Mr. Anderson. I know how to present cases in ways that generate maximum judicial sympathy. I know which character witnesses carry weight with specific judges. I know how to structure plea agreements that serve everyone's interests. Everyone's interests? The Martinez family receives closure and justice. The court system gets a conviction that demonstrates consequences for reckless driving. Your family stays together, and you serve a manageable sentence that allows you to rebuild your life afterward. Agent Sterling's voice, push him on how he guarantees specific outcomes. Bradley, I appreciate your confidence, but how can you guarantee that Judge Williams will sentence me lightly? What if she decides to make an example of me? Thompson glanced at Mom before answering. Mr. Anderson, I've been practicing criminal law in Phoenix for 15 years. Judge Williams and I have a professional understanding based on mutual respect and shared commitment to justice. What kind of understanding? The kind that comes from working together on complex cases where creative solutions serve the greater good. Mom interjected. Jonas, you're overthinking this. Bradley knows what he's doing. I decided to push harder. I'm just trying to understand how the system works. In my research, I found that vehicular homicide cases in Arizona typically result in 8 to 20-year sentences. How do you consistently achieve outcomes that are so much lighter? Thompson's demeanor shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. Every case is unique, Mr. Anderson. Circumstances, evidence, and presentation all affect outcomes. But you mentioned that you've handled dozens of similar cases. What makes them so successful? Preparation, strategic thinking, and maintaining positive relationships with court personnel. Agent Sterling whispered, he's being evasive? Try to get him to discuss payments or specific arrangements. Bradley, can I ask about your fees for this type of case? I imagine representing someone through a homicide confession requires significant resources. Your mother has handled the financial arrangements. My fee reflects the complexity and sensitivity of the situation. How much are we talking about? Mom answered before Thompson could speak. That's not your concern, Jonas. I'm paying whatever it takes to protect this family. I'm just curious about the economics. If you're guaranteeing specific outcomes, that seems like it would be worth a premium price. Thompson stood up and walked to the window overlooking downtown Phoenix. Mr. Anderson, I think you misunderstand the nature of my practice. I don't guarantee outcomes. I guarantee professional competence and maximum effort on behalf of my clients. Kevin checked his phone again and seemed increasingly agitated. Jonas, can we just get this done? I have to surrender tomorrow morning if you don't sign tonight. Actually, Kevin, there's something I need to ask you directly. Kevin looked up from his phone. What? Are you prepared to testify under oath that I borrowed your car and drove drunk that night. Of course, that's the plan. And you're comfortable lying under oath to send your brother to prison for a crime you committed? Kevin's face flushed red. I'm not lying. I'm protecting my family by sharing responsibility for a tragic accident. Sharing responsibility. Kevin, you killed Sarah Martinez. You fled the scene. You left her dying in the street while you called Mom for help instead of calling 911. Mom slammed her hand on the conference table. Jonas, stop attacking your brother. He's been through enough trauma. He's been through trauma. What about Sarah Martinez? What about her children? Thompson moved back to the table, sensing the conversation spiraling out of control. Mr. Anderson, I understand you're emotional about this situation, but we need to focus on practical solutions that protect everyone involved. Everyone except Sarah Martinez and her family. The Martinez family will receive justice when someone is held accountable for her death. Your confession provides that accountability. I decided to take a calculated risk. What happens if I change my mind later? What if I decide to recant my confession and tell the truth? The room fell silent. Thompson, Mom, and Kevin exchanged glances that lasted several seconds too long. Finally, Thompson spoke. Mr. Anderson, recanting a voluntary confession would be extremely difficult and inadvisable. It would suggest perjury, which carries additional criminal penalties. But hypothetically, what if I claimed I was coerced into confessing? By whom? Your loving family, your experienced attorney, who would believe such a claim? Kevin leaned forward, his earlier nervousness replaced by something harder. Jonas, why would you even think about changing your mind? Once this is done, it's done. You serve your time, come home, and we move on with our lives. What if I don't want to serve time for someone else's crime? Then you're not the brother I thought you were. Thompson opened his briefcase and pulled out a recording device. Mr. Anderson, since you seem to have concerns about future conversations, perhaps you'd be more comfortable if we recorded your voluntary statement right now. My blood turned to ice. Thompson was trying to create evidence of my confession, while I was wearing an FBI wire. If both recordings ended up in court, it would complicate the federal investigation and potentially destroy my credibility. Agent Sterling's voice crackled in my earpiece. Do not make any statements on his recording device. Stall for time. I don't think recording anything tonight is a good idea, I said. This is a big decision, and I want to make sure I fully understand all the implications. Thompson set the device on the table anyway. Just for clarity, Mr. Anderson, you understand that you're here voluntarily to discuss confessing to vehicular manslaughter in the death of Sarah Martinez. I understand that my family has asked me to consider taking responsibility for my brother's crime. Your brother's crime? I realized my mistake immediately. Kevin and Mom both stared at me with expressions of shock and anger. Kevin stood up abruptly. What did you just say? I said you want me to take responsibility. You said my brother's crime. You think I'm a criminal. Thompson stepped between Kevin and me. Gentlemen, let's remain calm and focused. But Kevin was no longer interested in staying calm. You know what, Jonas, forget it. Forget all of this. If you think I'm some kind of monster, then maybe I should just handle this situation my own way. What does that mean? Kevin pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. Maybe Kevin Anderson has a fatal car accident tonight. Maybe he disappears forever and starts fresh somewhere nobody knows his name. Mom grabbed Kevin's arm. Kevin, don't talk like that. Why not? If Jonas won't help his family, maybe his family should stop counting on him for anything. Thompson looked increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Mr. Anderson, I think we should reschedule this meeting for tomorrow when emotions have cooled. But Kevin was on a roll, now his voice growing louder and more aggressive. Actually, Bradley, maybe we need to discuss other options. Options that don't depend on Jonas's cooperation. Kevin, please. No, Mom, I'm done begging. Jonas thinks he's better than us, thinks he's more moral or whatever. Fine. But he won't be around long enough to feel superior. The threat was clear enough that Agent Sterling's voice immediately crackled through my earpiece. Say the phrase Jonas. Say it now. Kevin, I understand completely what you're suggesting. Kevin's eyes narrowed. Do you? Because I don't think you understand anything about loyalty or family or consequences. Actually, Kevin, I understand completely. Within 15 seconds, the conference room door burst open and FBI agents flooded in with weapons drawn. Agent Sterling led the charge, shouting, "Federal agents, everyone on the ground now." Thompson tried to run for a side exit, but Agent Park tackled him near the window. Kevin stood frozen in shock as Agent Chen handcuffed him. Mom screamed and tried to grab the confession documents before Agent Sterling stopped her. "Jonas Anderson, you son of a bitch!" Kevin shouted as they dragged him toward the door. "You set us up. You're a dead man." Mom turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this to your family?" "Because you stopped being my family the moment you asked me to confess to murder." Thompson was shouting about attorney-client privilege and demanding to call his contacts at the prosecutor's office. Agent Sterling informed him that Prosecutor Dennis Clark and Judge Patricia Williams were being arrested simultaneously in coordinated raids across the city. As they led my mother and brother away in handcuffs, Kevin turned back to me one final time. "This isn't over, Jonas. Even from prison, I'll find a way to make you pay." The conference room fell silent except for the sound of my own heavy breathing. Agent Sterling removed the recording equipment from my jacket and smiled grimly. "Mr. Anderson, you just helped us expose the largest judicial corruption scandal in Arizona history. Bradley Thompson's network is finished." I looked around the expensive conference room where my family had planned to destroy my life and felt nothing but relief that it was finally over. 6 months later, I stood in the witness box at the federal courthouse in downtown Phoenix, raising my right hand to swear an oath to tell the truth about the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed my life. The courtroom was packed with reporters, federal prosecutors, and family members of Thompson's victims, spanning 3 years of criminal enterprise. Kevin sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit, his face hollow and aged beyond his 24 years. Prison had stripped away his arrogance and entitlement, leaving behind a broken young man who finally understood that actions have consequences. Mom sat in the gallery behind him, her own legal troubles having been resolved through a plea agreement, in exchange for testifying against Thompson. "Mr. Anderson and Tibir," the federal prosecutor began, "please tell the court how you became involved in this conspiracy." I spent 4 hours detailing everything: Mom's desperate phone call, Kevin's lack of remorse, Thompson's criminal network, and the FBI sting operation that brought down 15 corrupt officials. My testimony helped convict Thompson of racketeering, bribery, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. He received 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Kevin was sentenced to 25 years for vehicular manslaughter, drug trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and racketeering. His racing friends Tyler and Brandon received shorter sentences for their cooperation, but their lives were effectively destroyed by association with Thompson's network. The most satisfying moment came during Kevin's sentencing hearing when I delivered a victim impact statement not only about his crime against Sarah Martinez, but about his systematic destruction of family bonds and trust. Your Honor, Kevin Anderson didn't just kill Sarah Martinez that night. He killed the idea of family that I had treasured since childhood. He took a sacred relationship built on love and loyalty and transformed it into a weapon designed to destroy me. I looked directly at Kevin as I spoke. For 28 years, I believed that being a big brother meant protecting my younger brother from harm. Kevin taught me that sometimes the most harmful thing you can do is shield someone from the consequences of their choices. Real love requires allowing people to face the results of their decisions even when those results are painful. Kevin's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since the accident, I saw genuine remorse in his expression. Mom received 15 years for conspiracy, money laundering, and accessory charges. During her sentencing, she finally acknowledged the depth of her betrayal. "I thought I was protecting my family," she said through tears. Instead, I was destroying the son who had always been there for me. Jonas, I'm sorry for asking you to sacrifice your life. I was wrong about everything. The judge was unmoved. Mrs. Anderson, you attempted to frame your innocent son for vehicular homicide while helping your guilty son escape justice. Your actions represent a complete breakdown of maternal responsibility and basic human decency. 6 weeks after the trials concluded, I used the $50,000 reward from the FBI's investigation to establish the Sarah Martinez Children's Education Fund. Every penny would go toward college scholarships for Sarah's kids Maria and Carlos, ensuring they received opportunities their mother would have provided. I visited Sarah's mother, Elena Martinez, to personally apologize for my family's actions and present the scholarship fund paperwork. Elena was a gracious woman in her 60s who worked as a housekeeper during the day and a restaurant cook at night to support her grandchildren. Mr. Anderson, I know this wasn't your fault, she said as we sat in her modest living room. But I appreciate you taking responsibility for your family's actions. Mrs. Martinez, I can't undo what Kevin did to Sarah, but I can make sure her children receive every opportunity they deserve. Sarah would have liked you, Elena said quietly. She believed in justice and forgiveness and second chances for people who earn them. Maria and Carlos, now 8 and 10 years old, were thriving despite their loss. Maria was learning piano and wanted to become a teacher like her mother. Carlos played Little League baseball and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. The scholarship fund would cover their education through college and graduate school. Will you tell them about their mother? I asked Elena. Every day, I tell them Sarah was beautiful and smart and kind. I tell them she loved them more than life itself. And now I'll tell them that sometimes good people step forward to help when bad people try to cause harm. I left the Martinez home feeling lighter than I had in months. Sarah's memory would live on through her children's achievements and the positive impact they would make on the world. Meanwhile, my own life was finally moving forward. Marcus and I had started Anderson Johnson Construction, specializing in affordable housing for working families. Our first project was a 12-unit apartment complex in South Phoenix, designed to provide safe, clean housing for single mothers and their children. It feels good to build things instead of tearing them down, Marcus said as we reviewed architectural plans for our second project. Sarah Martinez was a builder too, I replied. She built knowledge in children's minds, confidence in struggling students, and hope in families who needed it. This is just my way of continuing her work. Marcus smiled. Your brother took something beautiful out of the world. You're putting something beautiful back into it. Our business was thriving, funded partly by a construction loan and partly by selling the Scottsdale house that Mom had purchased with drug money. The property had been seized as criminal proceeds, then sold at auction. I used my inheritance to invest in legitimate business equipment and employee salaries. I had legally changed my name from Jonas Anderson to Jonas Martinez Anderson, honoring Sarah's memory while acknowledging my own journey toward redemption. The name change also helped me emotionally separate from the family that had tried to destroy me. On the first anniversary of Sarah's death, I visited her gravesite at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery. The headstone read, Sarah Elena Martinez, beloved mother and teacher, 1991-2023. She made every child feel special. Fresh flowers surrounded the grave left by former students, colleagues, and family members who still missed her presence. I knelt beside the headstone and spoke quietly. Sarah, I never got to meet you, but your children are doing well. Maria is reading at a 5th grade level, even though she's only in 2nd grade. Carlos scored 3 goals in his last soccer game. Elena says they both have your smile. A gentle breeze stirred the desert air, carrying the scent of orange blossoms from nearby trees. I want you to know that justice was served. Kevin will spend most of his life in prison. The corrupt system that would have protected him has been destroyed. Your death wasn't meaningless, even though it was senseless. I placed a single white rose on the grave. I promised to watch over Maria and Carlos as they grow up. I promised to make sure they remember how much you loved them. And I promised to keep building things that would make you proud. As I walked back to my truck, I thought about the phone call that had started this nightmare exactly 1 year ago. At the time, I believed I was losing my family forever. Instead, I had learned what family really means. People who love you enough to tell you the truth, support you through difficult times, and celebrate your growth rather than exploit your loyalty. Marcus and his wife, Denise, had become my chosen family. Elena Martinez had welcomed me as an honorary grandson. The children in our affordable housing project had become my extended community. Sarah's memory had become my inspiration. Real family isn't determined by blood or obligation or guilt. Real family is built on mutual respect, honest communication, and genuine care for each other's well-being. It's people who encourage your best self rather than demanding your sacrifice for their worst impulses. Kevin and Mom had taught me that loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from consequences. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow people to face the results of their choices, learn from their mistakes, and grow into better human beings. I had spent my entire adult life believing that strength meant absorbing other people's problems and sacrificing my own needs for family harmony. Sarah Martinez's death had taught me that real strength means standing up for truth and justice, even when it costs you everything you thought you valued. As I drove home through the Phoenix evening past the intersection where Sarah had died, and toward the apartment complex where families were building new lives, I felt profound gratitude for the painful journey that had led me to this moment. Sometimes losing the family you were born into creates space for the family you choose to build. Sometimes the worst betrayal becomes the foundation for the most authentic relationships. Sometimes the decision to save yourself gives you the power to save others. I had learned that you cannot sacrifice your integrity to preserve relationships that require your dishonesty to survive. You cannot build genuine love on a foundation of lies and manipulation. And you cannot find peace by enabling other people's destructive choices. But most importantly, I had learned that redemption is possible for people who face their mistakes honestly and work to repair the damage they've caused. Not the easy redemption Kevin expected without consequences, but the hard-earned redemption that comes through accepting responsibility and dedicating yourself to making amends. The phone call that destroyed my old family had ultimately given birth to something much more valuable, a life built on truth, a purpose rooted in justice, and relationships founded on genuine love rather than guilt and obligation. Sarah Martinez's children would grow up knowing they were loved, supported, and destined for greatness. Their mother's death had meaning because it led to changes that would prevent future tragedies and protect other families from the kind of corruption that nearly destroyed mine. And I would spend the rest of my life building things that honored her memory homes, for families who needed shelter opportunities, for children who deserved chances, and a legacy of justice for a woman who had dedicated her life to making the world a better place. Has your family ever asked you to sacrifice your future for someone else's mistakes? How do you balance loyalty with integrity when the people you love make destructive choices? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if Sarah's story touched your heart. Subscribe for more real stories about finding strength in impossible situations, and please share this with someone who might need to hear about the power of choosing truth over comfort. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. May you find the courage to build the life you deserve surrounded by people who love the real you.